Hi, everyone, and welcome. We're just going to give a couple of minutes while everyone arrives and gets settled. Hopefully, some of you just came from that really great Ask Me Anything student chat. But we're just going to wait a couple of minutes, give everyone a chance, and wait for our colleague who has just arrived. That's fantastic. Well done. Welcome, Nola.
Sorry, that was very close.
It's part of the fun. Great to see so many of you joining us. We're just going to give it a second and then we will get started. Okay, welcome everyone. So pleased you're joining us for this series of collaborative sessions. I hope you've learned lots. My name is Jessica and I'm with Arts University Bournemouth, and I'm here with my colleague Charlotte from Loughborough University and Nuala from Norwich University of the Arts. And we are so pleased to be here to talk to you a little bit about finding the right fit and choosing a university. This is something that I think is near and dear to our hearts because so often we hear families focusing on the topics and the issues that perhaps don't directly influence their day-to-day experience and their outcomes as much as they think they will. So what we want to do is just talk you through some of the things that we think are priorities and that might just get you to think about your university decision in a different way. So we are going to start with a brief introduction to the 3 universities that are participating in this session. Then we are going to talk about how you choose a university and where to start. What's some important information? We always love to talk a little bit about why you should consider the United Kingdom, because we know so many of you have you're spoiled for choice, so many options for you. So let's talk a little bit about the UK. Some other factors that you may not thought of and the ones that we know you are already thinking of. We will look beyond rankings. That's the word that we don't like to say too much, but we will touch on that. And then we will, of course, leave time, as we have in all of our sessions, to answer your questions. So please be sure to pop any questions you have in the Q&A box, and we will leave time at the end, and we really love to do that part. That's my favorite part. So I think we're going to kick off alphabetically with my university, Arts University Bournemouth. So we are a medium-sized creative university of about 3,700 students, all located on one campus. And that's one of my favorite things about AUB is all of our students, all of our courses, all of our facilities are on one campus. So you really get this creative community where you draw inspiration from everyone working around you. We have lots of really wonderful accolades, and that goes to the idea of rankings and league tables that you will see out there. But one that we're really proud of is that we've been named the top specialist art and design university by the Sunday Times Good University Guide for this year. We are the home of the Bournemouth Film School. Now, the Bournemouth Film School by name sounds like it's all of our film students, but in fact, it's much broader than that. It is a collaborative environment for all of the courses at AUB that touch on moving image. So in addition to film production, you will find our animation students, you will find our acting students, our creative writing students, our costume students, our makeup for media and performance students, and everybody is there working in this environment that mimics the workforce so that you're getting that hands-on practical experience and bringing your skills to the table. So we're really excited about the Bournemouth Film School. AUB offers a variety of scholarships, which are always worth checking out. And just a few names that you might have heard of. Edgar Wright is a relatively well-known filmmaker. He attended AUB. Simon Beaufoy won an Oscar for writing Slumdog Millionaire. Wolfgang Tillmans is a well-known fashion editorial photographer. And then Twinks Burnett is a fashion designer here in the UK. So now I'm going to send things along to Loughborough.
That is me. My unmute button wasn't working there for a second, but it is now. So yeah, my name is Charlotte. I am one of the international officers at Loughborough University. I also studied at Loughborough for my own degree. So I've been at the university for 10 years. And I love it. I love Loughborough. Loughborough is top 10 in every national UK league table, which is good. But one of the things we're going to explore today is what else to look at, not just to look at league tables. The reason I chose Loughborough is that we are a large single site campus. We're actually one of the biggest campuses in the UK, and I love our campus. It's such a friendly, collaborative environment. We have 17,500 students studying with us on campus, of which 7,500 students are living on campus at any one time. So we've got accommodation for our undergraduate students and our postgraduate students on campus. And Loughborough itself is a town in the East Midlands. So it's a campus university in a town. We are multidisciplinary, so we're a little bit different to many of the institutions part of this week, or this event this week. So we have fantastic schools of art and design, creative arts, social sciences and humanities, but we've also got big schools of engineering, science, sports science, business, so lots of stuff going on campus. And if you want any more information about Loughborough, please do get in touch with me at any point after this.
Hi everyone, so I'm Nuala. I'm the International Officer for Norwich University of the Arts, also known as NUA or NUA. And if you're wondering where Norwich is, it's a city in the east of England. It's about 2 hours from London, and it's also really well connected to other cities. Here you can see a snapshot of 2 of our buildings. We've got a city centre campus in the historic centre of Norwich, spread across 11 different buildings. On the left-hand side, you can see where our architecture and interior design students work, and our fine art building there on the river. We are a specialist arts university, so we just do creative degrees, and you can see a selection of them there. They range from acting to architecture, game design to graphics, fashion to film, and UX design, to name a few of them. We have 2,500 students, 9% of which are international. And this year we've actually welcomed more international students than ever before, which we're really happy about and very keen to continue. What that means is that when you join NUA, you join a very tight-knit creative community. So you will be collaborating across courses, you'll be making things from the very first day in studio, and you'll also get high quality contact time with your tutors, technicians, to really help you to produce the best work you can. So yeah, same, I came to Norwich to study, and I've been here a few years, and it's a really great place to live. It's got everything a big city has to offer, but it's also got a very distinctive arty feel to it. If you have any questions, obviously get in touch with me at the end of this and I'll be happy to answer them. So now that you had a little overview of each of our universities, we're going to give you some tips on making that decision and finding the best university for you. If you're looking through course lists or uni websites at the moment, you might be wondering where you start when you make that decision. And it really depends on what's important to you and what you want to get out from your time at university. So, you know, you might be passionate about a specific subject. You might be looking for a very specialized or niche creative degree and looking at schools who offer that particular degree, and that might be how you start your process. Or you might want to consider other factors, you know. The same degree or subject can mean very different things depending on which university you go to. So if you have a specific course in mind, it's really worth researching the course page on different universities and seeing what the modules are, how it's taught, and comparing, doing a bit of research beforehand. It's also worth putting in the time to consider other factors if you're more flexible, particularly about what subject you do, or you're still considering your options. Look at other things, look at location. Do you want to be in a big city or a smaller town? Do you want a specialist university? Do you want somewhere where you can pursue other interests or hobbies? So there are a lot of things that you can consider when making that decision. But look at either your degree or look at what you want out of student life and your university experience more generally. So why come to the UK? Well, creative degrees are highly specialized here. The UK has a great reputation for creative degrees, and compared to other countries, the great thing is that degrees here last 3 years and they're usually practical, specialized with a strong industry focus. So you won't have to do subjects that aren't related to your area of study. You will start studying what you want to specialize in from day one. There's no electives or minors or anything like that. That means that you're going to develop those skills from the very start of your degree, and you'll be industry ready by the time you graduate. It's also a great destination for aspiring creatives, purely because the creative industry in the UK is very vibrant, and we'll talk a bit about that in a moment. But yeah, I'll hand over to Charlotte to tell you a bit more about where we are.
Okay, yeah, I can talk about this. So when you're looking at universities in the UK, you guys might not even decided what country you want to go to, but in the UK, it's quite a small country, but there are big differences across the 4 nations that make up the United Kingdom. So you're deciding when you go to university, not just where you want to study, but also where you're going to live for 3 years if you do a straight bachelor degree, 4 years if you're already a placement or foundation year, 5 years if you do a master's course, or if you do what I've done. I moved there for a 3 years degree and never left. So I've lived in Loughborough for 10 years. I bought my house there. So you are choosing your home, and there's lots of things to consider there. Are you choosing a city or a town? What is the cost of living? How are you going to get there from your home country? How can you travel around? Do you want to be close to the sea? Do you mind about that? Do you want to go to a big university? Loughborough's got 17,500 students, but there are universities in the UK that have 45,000 students, and there are also multiple universities in that city. So upwards of 100,000 students in some university cities across the UK. So if you have a look on the map, you can see where the participating universities this week are. You can see we're scattered all across the country. So that is something that you definitely need to think about as well.
Okay, so as I mentioned a minute ago, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the creative industries in the UK. So you might be under the impression, or people around you might be under the impression, that if you do a creative degree, you're just going to end up freelancing or in, maybe not quite as secure a career as in other degrees. As you will see in the next couple of slides, the reality is happily quite different. We've got an overview here of the creative industries in the UK. So it's from 2018, which is the most recent data we have at the moment. But the main things to focus on is the figures on the left-hand side. So you can see that the creative industries were worth 111.7 billion a year, which adds up to 12.7 million an hour. If you're not sure what that means in real terms, it's worth considering that it's growing at about 3 times the general other sectors. So it's very much a booming sector of the economy. Again, if you're not sure what that means in terms of jobs, you can see the breakdown there in the middle, and a lot of things fall under creative, which you might not think are creative, particularly things like the games industry, IT, software, UX design, and the screen industry as well, so film and TV, and all the associated jobs with those. So how does that translate into actual jobs? Well, the thing to consider is that there's a huge variety of jobs in the creative sector. So just because you do a degree in, say, fine art or design doesn't mean that you're going to just be a practicing artist. There are many things you can do afterwards. So here we've got 2.1 million creative jobs in the UK for that same year that we were looking at, and a further 61,000 were created the following year. So that's a huge amount of jobs that are being created, and it's rising. To give you an idea, that's again 2.7 times more than in other sectors. But what I think is really interesting is if you look on the right-hand side, only 33% of those creatives are self-employed or freelancing. So a lot of creatives actually do find employment in-house in companies. Again, London is obviously a hub for the creative industries, but it's not limited to the capital. You can see the spread of creative jobs and opportunities throughout the country here. So you can take a look at where the different institutions are and see that if you like where you are, you're very likely to also be able to find employment where you go study, which is, I think, a really lovely thing to think about.
So I'm going to take over now and talk a little bit about some of the other things that you'd want to consider. So one place that students often start when they're looking at universities is looking at rankings, league tables, other metrics that kind of compare universities. And these do give you a good place to start, but there are so many different rankings and league tables out there that it can be quite overwhelming. You've got rankings of world universities, of UK universities. You have overall university rankings compared to subject rankings. So when you're looking at league tables, do have a little look at how they are assessing those the universities. There are three main UK universities, three university league tables. And if you look across them, you will find that some universities are pretty standard across the three, but some fluctuate massively. And that's because there's lots of different ways of assessing what makes the university the best. Some of our rankings are focused more on the student experience, the teaching quality, whereas other rankings in the UK are focused more on research collaborations. So do have a look at what makes those rankings and those league tables, what they're built on. But also remember that rankings change. You know, in the 10 years that I've been looking at universities and working in the university sector, we've seen universities fly way up in the rankings. We've seen universities go a lot further down in the league tables as well. So just because you're going to a university that's highly ranked one year doesn't mean it will stay that way. And just because a university is further down a league table doesn't mean it is necessarily any worse. The differences between the universities at the top and towards the middle and the bottom in the UK, not necessarily much at all. And a university that might not be towards the top of the league tables overall might be the very best in the UK or in the world for the subject that you want to do. So do your research into rankings with a pinch of salt. And just because a university is higher up in the rankings doesn't necessarily mean it is the right university for you and the subject that you want to study and the way you want to be taught. So there are lots of other things to consider as well. So when you're looking at, if we go on to the next slide, that'd be great. So if we're looking at course content, you might have decided which course you want to study. You might know you want to do fine art, or you want to do creative writing, or whichever program it is that you want to study. But how universities teach that will be really different across the UK and across the world. The same course name can mean very, very different things. I studied history at university. I went to Loughborough and did history and geography as my degree. My best friend from my history A level at school also went on to study history at university, except he went to Swansea and he did medieval history. And I went to Loughborough and our history degree was modern, except we both came out with a degree, a Bachelor of Arts in History. So similarly, if you're looking at graphic design, for example, and illustration, what focuses are there at the university you're looking at? What sort of modules fit within that degree? Do they teach the bits that you're interested in? Do the academics have the area of expertise that you want to be able to develop? And that can be linked to what your skills are, but also what you find most interesting, what careers you want to pursue. Also look at how a degree is taught. Are you going to be in small groups or is it a big class size? Are you going to be taught mostly theoretical, lectures, seminars, or is there a lot of hands-on studio work? Media is a really good example of this, and some of you might be interested in media degrees. Some universities have very, very practical media degrees. Other universities, such as Loughborough, our media degree is entirely theoretical. There is no practical work within the course as well. So depending what you're looking for, depending which universities you would want to apply to. And a really good way of looking at what the course involves is looking at the work that students are doing. Particularly in the creative fields, you can see what a university student is developing in their work. Universities will promote their students' work. Most creative universities will do degree shows for their graduating students, where they're publicizing the work of their students, Previously, these have been in-person exhibitions, but over the last few years, it's all been online. So have a little look at the work the students 3-4 years above you have developed and see if that's the sort of thing that you would want to be doing. And then you go into university to do a degree, to graduate, but we've talked about location, we've talked about finding your home. You are not just going to study for 3 years. You're going to have hopefully the best 3-4 years of your life. So what you do extracurricularly is really important. And that is a very personal decision, what sort of person you are. You might know that you're a party animal, so you want to go somewhere that's got good nightlife, or you might know that you're not. If anyone was just in the Ask Me Anything session previously, our students that were on there talked about the things that they like to do extracurricularly. If you play a sport and you want to continue that, as well as studying a creative degree, make sure you go to a university that supports that. If you have interests, what are the clubs and societies? What things can you do extracurricularly alongside your degree? And that might be things that you've done before, or it might be the opportunity to get involved with things that you've never had the chance to try, and you might find new hobbies and interests. And not just are these things that you do for fun, but these are also the sort of things that you get involved with: leading societies, being involved in sports teams, volunteering work, charity work, that you will put on your CV when you go to find graduate jobs or placements, that will develop you as a person, develop your soft skills alongside your degree. And also you might find through these opportunities that you end up with graduate jobs related to that. I know a lot of my friends, who have done things like charity work, volunteering, media, who have gone into work in that industry afterwards. One of my friends who was head of our student union media, through that, she got an opportunity extracurricularly to work with Capital Radio. She then went on to present that and produce Capital Radio as her graduate job. She was a producer on their breakfast show, and she did that, got those connections through her extracurricular work. Have the next slide, please. And alongside that, one of the big things I really emphasize is that if this is going to be your home, you might spend anywhere between 12 and 20 hours a week in your study time being taught. There will be self-study in that, and a lot of creative programs will get a studio, but that's not many hours in a week. Where are you going to be for the rest of that? And obviously a lot of that is where you're going to be living. So have a look, speak to the universities to see what their accommodation options are. Do they have university accommodation? Is it on the campus, or is it close to the university facilities? Is it close to the facilities that you're going to be studying in? What is the accommodation like? Is it nice? Some university accommodation in the UK is like living in a 5-star hotel. Absolutely fantastic. Some of it at the other end of the scale, not quite so nice. Are you guaranteed accommodation that is owned by the university? At Loughborough, we guarantee our international students at least 2 years of accommodation owned by the university. Or are you going to be required to find your own accommodation? Do you want to live in halls of residence, or do you want to live in private accommodation? If you're going to be living off campus, where do the students live, and how would you then get to the university for your lectures? Equally, if you're living on a campus, where is the nearest town or city that you're going to want to go out, and how do you get there as well? When you look at halls of residence, we have options for catered or self-catered accommodation. So if you can cook and you're confident in that, you're probably quite happy to have self-catered accommodation. But if you've always lived with your mom or your dad and they've always cooked for you and you don't know how to cook and you don't know how to go food shopping, catered accommodation can be a really good option. It's one less thing to worry about. If you're going to have rooms, most rooms in the UK will be single occupancy, but there may be shared rooms as well. And linked to that, do you share your bathroom, or do you have an ensuite? And what is the cost as well? What can you afford? Speak to your parents. What is your budget for your accommodation? Accommodation across the UK varies massively in price. And one of the reasons that I chose Loughborough was because Loughborough's accommodation was comparatively very cheap, but also nice. But if you are on a budget, what would your budget be? What can you afford for accommodation? Which universities can you afford to live in? Generally, living in London can be a bit more expensive. You're paying for that London lifestyle compared to living in a city. But also, what are the options at each university? At Loughborough, we've got 17 halls of residence, which starts at about £3,500 per year for the cheaper options. It goes up to £7,000, so twice as much for the more expensive options. So what are the different options at the universities, and how will that work for you? And also linked to that, look at the finances of the universities. Tuition fees across the UK will vary. Different universities will charge a different amount for their fees. So what is the cost of the course you are looking to study at? And speak to the universities about how they would expect you to pay that. Linked to that, are there any scholarships available that you would be eligible for? Most universities will have some, if not a variety of scholarships, particularly for international students. Some of these may be based on the country that you're from, and there may be a small number for students from a certain country which you can apply for. Often these are linked to areas, you showing why you want to be a student, they're competitive, what you want to do, why you should get a scholarship. At the universities like Loughborough, we have merit-based scholarships. So we have a 25% tuition fee scholarship for students achieving the equivalent of 3 A's in their A-level or whatever qualification you are taking. But that is automatically considered. So you don't have to apply for that. We would automatically consider you, but we only have a 25% scholarship. Some universities might have 100% scholarships that you can apply for. Find out what they are, but also find out what you need to do to be eligible, and also the deadline. Often universities will have quite early deadlines for their scholarship applications. I know universities where their scholarship deadline is November, when you're not starting until the next September. So you might need to be getting in there early. Talked a little bit about this with accommodation. What are the living costs in where you want to study? The difference between living in a city and living more rural can often be varied, and generally living in the north of the UK is cheaper than living in the south. So look at your budget. And linked to this, part-time jobs. This is something that I always encourage students to get a part-time job, help you have some independence with your finances, earn some money, but also the part-time jobs that you get would look good on your CV and may also end up linking to what you do when you graduate. I got a part-time job in my first week of uni to earn some money to pay for my social life. I got a job as a student ambassador, and I did that mainly so I could tell my mum that I could spend my money on what I wanted. And it ended up being my full-time job when I graduated. And through that, I've been able to travel the world. I get to do things like this and speak to students, and it is a job that I absolutely love. International students, if you're on a visa, most visas will allow you to work up to 20 hours a week. So have a look what jobs are available, and also speak to current students at that university. We've talked about the Ask Me Anything panels, Uni Buddy, speak to students and see if they work part-time as well, and what opportunities there are as well. And I'm going to pass over to Jess at this point.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Nuala and Charlotte. I think that's a really great overview. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the more kind of practical things when you're looking at a university and like admissions and the application process. So admission requirements is also something to consider. And this can be a little bit tricky because especially if you're an international student, you may be studying a different system and you're looking at the website and all you can see is information about the British qualifications. But I promise you, every university will have information available through someone like us, the contacts that you have, or on the website to talk what the expectations are for admission requirements. And they can vary. Probably not massively, but it may make a difference for you. So it's very important to have a look. UCAS can also be a good source of information on admission requirements, but do have a look. If you're someone who might be required to take an English test for admission, even the types of English tests that each university accepts could be different because the universities can set the English scores themselves. So if there's a test that you have easy access to that you've already taken, that might be something that you take into consideration as a part of your process. Competitiveness of the course can sometimes be difficult to define, because the portfolio and audition requirements are often a factor in the competitive nature of our courses. So that is something that you will have to do a little bit more nuanced research about, and really good ways to find out about how competitive a course is academically or in terms of the portfolio or audition is often through the open day sessions. And the good news is many universities are still hosting virtual open days, and you will have the chance to hear directly from the course teams about what they expect from their applicants, so you can help to gauge where you see yourself in terms of your academic qualifications. There's the opportunity, especially for bachelor's degree students who've applied through UCAS, that when you go through your process and hopefully you're made all of your offers, you have the opportunity to choose a firm and insurance choice. So through the UCAS system, you don't have the ability to hold all of your offers indefinitely. UCAS will set a date by which you need to choose which offer you are accepting. And so your first choice will be your firm, and then your backup choice will be your insurance. And then basically you're declining the other offers that you might have. And this is a good process. By the time this deadline comes around, you want to have done all your research and be confident in the choice that you're making. So where to look at this? We're big proponents of the UCAS website, especially for bachelor degree students. The great thing about the UCAS site is it holds a lot of information in one place. So you have the ability to search by city or location. You have the ability to search by level of study or by discipline. And then the information is presented in a very standard way. So if you're very new to this process of researching, you might want to start with UCAS so that you get a sense of how the information is presented. And then following that, you can move on to those universities that really sparked your interest and go to the website for further details. They also have a lot of resources on the UCAS page about the UK application process, and they have blogs and videos posted by students and their experience. They also have a lot of great recordings they've made on preparing your personal statement or doing your university research. And then of course, UCAS will be where you track the status of your application for your bachelor's degree at almost all of the UK universities. So we really strongly recommend it. The information that appears on the website is provided by the universities, so you know that it is reliable, but it's a great starting point for your research. And then some other resources. UCAS appears at the top of this list as well, and I apologize for the missing photo on the right-hand side. We were pulling this together at the last second. You might also look at the Discover Uni website. The British Council in your country could be very, very useful. And you know, it's a good resource in terms of it being an independent organization with education in mind. The university websites, as I said, a very important source. Social media accounts, please do check that out. Follow the universities, follow the students that they've linked, follow the various departments and organizations. It's amazing how much you can learn about the culture of a university through their social media accounts, and drilling down to those student accounts that are just that little bit more organic. And some university fairs like this one. And there will be another many opportunities for the opportunity to interact with the universities. And you'll hear from us about some of those over the next couple of weeks. So just to kind of sum up, questions that you start with. What do I want to study? And that could seem like a really simple question, but as we've touched on, it isn't as simple as that. And the name of a course or a discipline that you think you understand can look at it like very different things at different institutions and in different countries. So that's something to think about. Where do I want to live? What type of campus? What type of community? Do I have family nearby? Have I visited before? What does my living life look like? What kind of university do I want? Do I want a large, comprehensive, multi-faculty university, or do I want a specialist, smaller, creative campus type environment? And city versus town. I have to share my favorite little factoid about UK but English life. Bournemouth, the city or the town that I'm located in, is 200,000 people, but it is a town because we do not have a cathedral. And in the UK, in England, whether or not you are a city is determined by whether or not you have a cathedral. Now, this is slowly changing, but historically, a community, there's one in Wales that has about 1,800 people that live there, but it has a cathedral and therefore is a city. But a place that's much, much larger would not be called a city. So even looking at what people call it, what you judge by the name, a town of Bournemouth versus the city of Winchester, very different things. And that's just one of those little nuances that I just get a kick out of. So I always love to share that. Will I meet the entrance requirements? That's really important. You don't necessarily want to set your sights on a course or a university where it isn't realistic that you will meet their requirements. However, because creative degrees often take into consideration portfolios, personal statements, and references, there's often a little bit of leeway on those academic qualifications. So sometimes it's worth having those aspirational institutions as well. And of course, it'll often come down to finances and what is your budget and how can you make this work. So what's next? And I'm hoping some of you will be popping some questions in the Q&A because that's coming up right away. So please do put some questions in the Q&A box. Please do your research. This is an important decision. And the more research that you can do, the more comfortable you will feel that you're making the right decision for you. So attend the open days. There's something called an applicant day, which will often occur once you've submitted your application, but as an extra chance to interact directly with the course team, with current students, and get a little bit more detailed perspective of what goes on a daily basis in the course you've applied for. Lots of webinars, and I know we're all a little tired, a little bit of Zoom fatigue, but it's still a great opportunity to get lots of information from reliable sources in often a free and accessible way. Talk to current students. The Ask Me Anything session earlier and will be repeated again later today. The Unibuddy platform that exists on almost all of our websites, or just reach out to the university and say, is there a student on your course that I can speak to? You can talk to us as well. This is our job and this is what we love to do. So please don't hesitate to reach out. Don't think that we're too busy or this isn't what we want to do. We want to give you all of the information that you need to make your decision. Of course, check out the websites and please do check on the social media. And I think now we're going to move into the question and answer section. How are we doing, Charlotte? We got any questions?
Yeah, so we had 2 in at the moment, and please do, if you're watching this, pop more questions in the Q&A for us. I think the first one is a really interesting one, and a student has asked if they're a fashion student, is it right to eliminate countries like France and Italy where the fashion industry thrives simply because of the language barrier? So I guess that's a question of, would language affect where a student comes from? But I guess in that we can also talk about the opportunity for study abroad perhaps as well within a degree. So Jess or Nola, have you got anything to kind of suggest to that student there?
Yeah, I would say just it sounds really obvious, but check what language the degree is taught through. If you don't speak another language and you're hoping to study through English rather than say French or Italian, make sure that the institution you've selected in one of those countries does offer teaching through English. There are institutions in Europe and other countries who do their degrees through English at undergrad and postgrad level. So it's just worth really double checking. I would say it's the same decision as what we've covered in this presentation. So consider if you want to go to a specific country because of the fashion industry, and that's your main factor, and you want to do fashion and you want to be in that particular industry in that country, then it's a matter of looking at the other factors. Can you live happily there? Will you be allowed to work part-time? And can you study through English or your own home language? That would be my advice.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, I think that's really well said. And I think that, not that we're here to promote other countries, but there are a number of institutions in many European countries that do teach in English. And so it might be a viable option for those who don't speak additional languages. But I think it's really key to explore those other options. The opportunity to stay and work after you've completed your studies, that's another factor. And sometimes we're not even thinking about that because it's 3, 4, 5 years down the road. But that can have a massive impact because we do so much work around helping you build your professional network. And then if you're kind of forced to leave the country after you've finished your studies, that's a lot of hard work that you've already done that you could lose out on. So absolutely, but there's lots of viable international student communities in many, many different countries. So it's really finding that fit for you.
Yeah, I think the other thing to add there as well, if you're looking at going to one of those countries because of kind of the options related to networking and things, is if you are moving somewhere, not just what you study in, but the language around you. If you don't speak the language, that's a very personal decision. But the other thing you could do is, if you come to a university like one of ours in the UK, take up a language extracurricularly. So we at Loughborough do extracurricular French, Italian, Spanish, etc. And then there's the opportunity to do either a 6-month or a year study abroad within your degree, or to take a 1-year work placement year or study abroad year and work in that country for a year as well. So you can still get that kind of French or Italian time during a degree in the UK as well. So lots of different opportunities. You're not necessarily choosing one country. We've had another question in from a student that's looking at arts universities that require a portfolio, who's currently in year 12. When should they start making their portfolio?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think most of us would suggest you're always working on your portfolio, because it really is developing your skill set and your ideas and your inspiration and your perspective. But what you will actually submit as a part of your portfolio will be curated from your most recent work. So rarely do we want to see the pieces that go back to like year 9 or your GCSEs or the middle years. Often in that 2 to 3 year gap, you've evolved as an artist already. So you really do want it to be relatively recent work, because part of what we're trying to do is get a sense of who you are as an artist and where your skills are now in the year prior to you beginning your studies. That doesn't mean you can't draw from other work, but really the bulk of it should be most recent. And I think the other thing I would just mention on that is it doesn't all have to be, and for many of you, it won't be schoolwork. So if you're doing A-levels in a creative subject, or you're in visual arts at an IB school, or you're taking art in your high school, and you'll be doing lots of great work, and that's wonderful, but we also need to see self-directed work. And so that should be relatively recent as well. Somebody else want to add?
Yeah, I think that answers it pretty well. So another good question we've had come in is, are students allowed, or applicants allowed, to show their portfolio to university members of staff to ask for suggestions? And is there opportunities to chat with the subject teachers? Do either of you want to answer that? I'm happy to answer it from a Loughborough perspective. I know, so at Loughborough, there are opportunities to speak to our academics. They will, particularly through open days, there are opportunities. If you contact via the website, they will give some of their time. Often, just because of how many applicants we get and how their workload balances, they're unable to give loads of in-depth discussion on one portfolio. So they can't give loads of their time just because of how many applicants we have, but they will be happy to share their experiences and answer questions. And often universities will run opportunities for you to meet staff members from the faculty you're applying for. So that's a really good place to start. And the other thing is, talk to us as well if you want to find out more about the universities. Whilst the academics, the teachers, their full-time job is to teach our current students, our job is to engage with you. So we will help, and we can often act as a link as well. So if we don't know the answer, we can connect you to a member of staff. So that would be my kind of first point of call. Look at what opportunities are available at the universities you're looking to apply to. How can you engage through those formal opportunities? And then speak to your international officer, so myself, Jessica, Nuala, whoever it is for the institutions you're applying for, and see how we can help you as well. Either of you got anything to add there?
Yeah, similarly, I think we're in a very similar situation. We will sometimes have webinars, things like perfecting your portfolio, or specialized things for our applicants or applicant days. But, you know, we're your first point of contact if you have questions about your portfolio. You do get a chance to speak to course leaders and subject teachers at open days. And again, you can also reach out to our current students as well and ask them questions through UniBuddy or Ask a Student. So that's always also worth considering.
Yeah. Okay, next question came in. Is it possible to balance part-time work and studies? I'd say absolutely, definitely yes. Jess, have you got any examples or anything to add there?
Well, the only thing I would say is especially for international students, the ability to work is often factored into the budget. And so you have a dependence on that part-time work, to pay for your studies and your living and your costs. And so that puts a lot of pressure on our international students who are also going through a massive transition. I mean, adjusting to university for anybody, even if they're only moving across the street, is a huge life transition, but to move thousands of miles away and go through this as well. So we often caution international students at the beginning to focus on the transition in their education and perhaps find the part-time work after they feel a little bit more settled. And we really do hope and advise that you can be not dependent upon earning that income right from the minute you step off the airplane, just to ensure that you're taking care of yourself and giving yourself space and time to go through this massive transition. But I would absolutely agree, and Charlotte, you already talked about it, your personal experience. Part-time work is such an integral part of your student experience that we would highly recommend it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we've got one more question. If you have any more, please do pop those in the Q&A. What happens if a student changes their mind, if they start applying for a program that they realize isn't what they want to do, or if they start on a course that they aren't enjoying? What are their options there?
Yeah, I can start answering from NUA. So the short answer is, if you enroll in a course and you realize that it's not quite what you expected, or it doesn't quite have that focus, you do have leeway to change. Some of our courses have a lot of overlap. For instance, all our graphics courses, you have a common first year. So, a lot of students can sort of seamlessly transition to, say, from graphic design to graphic comms in their second year. But the short answer is, yes, there is. Obviously, it is a bit time sensitive, but if you change your mind, it's not the end of the world. Talk to us, talk to your course leaders, and yeah, it is possible. You don't have to get it right straight away.
Jess, do you want to add anything to that one?
Yeah, I was just thinking, we spend a lot of time talking about one of the advantages of the UK system is this deep dive into a subject, and that for those that are passionate and love what they're doing, this is everything. But every once in a while, a student just has a moment of, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And you could do all of the research, and it's until you set foot in that doesn't come to light. And that's exactly it, is just communicate with people. And it could even be just a bit of cold feet, and that you might come back to it after a little bit of time. So the most important thing is to remember that there are people on campus, all of us, all of our colleagues, who just want to make sure you have the best experience you can, and will facilitate that conversation and that change if needed. And I will mention, as a part of the application process, if you identify during the application process, there can be opportunity for making that change before you begin, but it can often involve a reassessment of your portfolio by a different course team, something like that. But again, just talking to the university, and they can really assist with that process.
Yeah, I'd say from Loughborough's point of view, from my experience, if you're going for a similar course, changing before you've arrived, once you've submitted your UCAS, the universities can, if maybe some other reassessment, but we can make change of course officer. It's not like you have to redo your UCAS. We can change this on our back end. So that's, we can't guarantee that if you apply for one course and get an offer, we can swap you over, but we will do our very best, particularly if it's a course that's similar. At Loughborough, we do dive in quite into the specialisms quite early on. So it tends to, we tend to say within the first 2 weeks to a month, if you're realizing that you've really made the wrong decision, that's when there tends to be the opportunity to switch. After that, it gets a bit harder. We do for our art school promote the foundation year for this very reason, that actually we, at Loughborough, we have arts degrees, we have fine arts, graphic design and illustration, or graphic communication illustration, and we do textiles, and we'll do fashion design. But we often know that students at school don't necessarily know which of these specialisms they're going to fit into. And this is why we would promote the foundation year, so that you get experience of all of these different areas, and you can decide with kind of a more knowledgeable head which one you want to go into. But I will also say that I started at university, I did history and geography was my degree. I started, and I, about 2 weeks in, had a complete breakdown about it and wanted to change my course. I went to my personal tutor. So at university, you will get a personal tutor who is a member of academic staff in your department. And I spoke to her and I was like, I don't want to do geography. No, I don't want to do history anymore. And she was like, okay, let's talk about this. I got to the point that I filled out the form to switch my degree to straight geography. The day I was actually meant to hand the form in, it rained. So I didn't walk to the geography department to hand it in. So I went back to my tutor and she was like, have you filled out the form? And we discussed why I was hating it. And really what I realized is that the geography part of my degree, we haven't had any assessments yet. And it was all quite nice and easy. Whereas history had gone straight in and said, write me a 4,000 word essay in week 2. And I'd gone, no, thank you, don't want to do that. So actually, by talking through to her, she made me realize that I did enjoy history, I could do it. And that's what I continued with. So actually, talk to people about those options, talk through what you're struggling with. You might find that there's ways that you can adapt the program, that you've maybe just had a hard week at the beginning. So yeah, talk to anyone. Don't sit there panicking.
Culture shock, even as a Brit, is a real thing. So imagine that transition. And I was just going to say, Charlotte, I think that is an eminently relatable story. I think we've all lived something like that. So thank you for sharing. Worst case scenario here is you get well into your first year and it's kind of the point of no return on that year, that there's nothing to be gained by necessarily walking away from it, assuming that you're safe and healthy, of course. If you're in a position to do so, making that transition after 1 year, and even if you have to start a different degree over, in the grand scheme of life, isn't a big deal. It's 1 year, and lessons learned and so on through that. So that happens too sometimes. We'd like to avoid it if we can, but really there's never a point of no return. So do always know you can explore options.
And I think a lot of this is looking at what the right fit for you is, making sure you do your research about a course. You're applying to a course for the right reasons, because it's what you want to do, not because someone is pushing you into it or it's what you think you should do. And also you're choosing the university because it's where you want to go, not because it's 4 places higher in a league table, or it's where your dad studied, or a reason that you feel you should. You're choosing the university that you think you're going to be happy at. And again, really quick story, one of my best friends from school, she went to university, and she went to a university that was close to her family. Family were alumni, to do biochemistry, because that's what her dad thought she wanted to do. And she'd done well in her science A-levels, fine. And she hated every second of it. It wasn't the right fit for her as a person. She'd have been much better on a campus university. She was quite a long way from home and family support. She didn't enjoy the activities and she hated biochemistry. So she actually ended up dropping out after her first year. And she then went back to a different university, very different style of teaching, and did a primary school teaching degree with a focus on arts. And now she's a primary school teacher and she's loving life. So she 100% made that decision. It was a very brave thing to do, to say, this isn't for me, but actually her family supported her. She was so scared of telling everyone, but everyone supported her and said, you've got to do what's right for you. She talked to her friends, family, universities, and they all supported her with that. So yeah, it's a brave thing to do, but make sure you're doing what is right for you. And I think on that is all the questions we've got. So Jess has put our contact details on the screen. Anything that we can help with, please feel free to get in contact with any of us, any of the other universities participating this week, we would be very happy to talk to you. You know, our job, yes, we promote the universities that we work for, but equally I spend as much time saying to students why they might not want to consider Loughborough if I don't think it's the right fit for them, as trying to convince them to come to study with me. So we are very honest. We want what is right for you as well. We would never want a student to come and study with us who we think isn't going to be happy, because that's not good for any of us. So yeah, honest advice, let us know whenever we can help.
Yeah, I think that's true. One of my favorite things I say to people is, if I serve no other purpose than to validate your decision to go somewhere else, I'm okay with that, provided that you've exhausted all your research, you've asked all the questions, and you've come to an informed decision. My university, Charlotte's University, No Legs University, aren't going to be for everybody. So we just want you to find the best fit for you.
No, exactly. We just want you to be happy. And as Charlotte was saying earlier, we want you to have an amazing 3 or 4 years here. So, you know, if we can help you make that decision, that's what we're here for.
Thank you, everybody. And we really appreciate you joining us today. And thanks for the great questions.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.